When your coach refers to a work-related situation as the knife is falling, what does it generally mean? Why is it important for you as a team member, supporting manager, or a fellow Agile practitioner in the field to understand this concept properly? I will explain to you on this video. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel and to the podcast if you are just consuming the audio of this version of this episode. For those of you who are new here, I would like to use this chance and express my especially warm welcome. I'm Dimitri, I'm a Lean Agile Transformation Coach from Sydney, Australia. I talk to you here about all matters Lean and Agile, not just the real basics that you would have heard of by now from my show or from some other numerous sources by now. But sometimes we cover more convoluted and confusing matters like the one that I think we should talk about today. Why not, right? I try generally and help you to get more confident in this Agile and Lean space beyond reciting the good old Scrum guide. And this will help you to present yourself to your potential employer and the teams that you'll be working with as an Agile practitioner with a heartbeat who is more on the ball, so to speak. I think so anyway. If this sounds like your cup of tea, why not subscribe right now? Could be a good time. So when your Agile coach, for example, a transformation leader, refers to a situation overall as the knife is falling, what does it mean and why should you understand it better? Because ultimately we are talking about the concept of transformation towards the new ways of working, when a lot of things potentially are changing around you, regardless of your role almost. As coaches, we often use analogies and metaphors because, for better or for worse, those are much easier to comprehend and sometimes even to convey to unprepared public or simply professionals who are newish to these matters. It's how we learn stuff as human beings in a natural sense of the word, rather than just taking some new term as we heard it without building a mental bridge or some sort of form of association that would help convert it into more long-lasting memory and a solid concept that you could then refer to yourselves or just rely upon otherwise somehow. Transformations are hard because change is hard by definition. Scale of change obviously dictates how hard it is for us on average to deal with. So sometimes we have to deal with a lot of moving parts in transformation and variables that just won't stop. They keep changing as part of our jobs in this transformation kind of leadership of sorts if you're involved in that. So, for example, team composition might remain unclear as the team keeps, changing. Some people get assigned, some people get reassigned, some people leave. And that happens as a natural process normally, but sometimes it falls under the situation where it's rather drastic and where, for example, senior leadership demands for some sort of reporting that they would understand better from traditional concepts. So, for example, they're trying to ask you for specific forecasts, commitments, budgets, other things. In some more purist situations, one could argue that we are supposed to say, okay, here you go. You get what you get. We've done our best to estimate and forecast based on current very changing conditions. Hope it's okay for you. And sure, this scenario happens, and is triggered almost sometimes by us coaches whenever possible to remain responsive to business demands, go with the flow. And ultimately, look, in many cases it assists management in slowly adopting the new ways of working when we don't say a flat out no, right? But seeking ways to illustrate to them how they are trying to exercise elements of control over something that's very much in motion and that therefore won't give them a reliable sense of control. Or perhaps they're seeking some numbers that would mean something. These numbers that will give them won't mean much. In other situations, however, a coach that's exposed to some extra streams of information, usually above the delivery team level, they can assess the level of uncertainty and strain, ultimately, that any similar demands from leadership could put delivery teams under. So, in other words, they could just decide, the coach could decide that we need to pause and, for the lack of a better word, tell those people with demands to back off a little bit. And that would be beneficial to everyone, including themselves. So do not try to catch a falling knife is a metaphor, a full metaphor that's being used here. The falling knife means in this context is that the situation is so unstable that your coach assesses personally that it might be calling out, he might need to call out or she might need to call out for ceasefire to allow the situation to stabilize a little bit so that knife hits the floor, then you pick it up. Otherwise you'll cut yourself as you try to catch it while it's falling. In those cases, it's all about being honest with your leadership and the teams themselves about something that's affecting them and the organization so much that many forms of attempts to formalize the process, try and produce some more or less reliable delivery forecasts, product scope inclusions, general projections of how some change perhaps would affect the teams and the organization. So those demands in those conditions might cause more damage than benefit. As this is one of those non-standard and more informal teachings that you'd come across only in the field of modern agile transformations, if you've been around those long enough and talked to different people, I suppose, it's subject to your interpretation and food for thought. So I hope that you take it, if nothing else, then like an awareness building exercise. Before you go and before I wrap up today, I would like to just give a quick notice to my listeners who I would call my regulars. You probably noticed that I've tried to go back to a weekly schedule of publishing podcast episodes and videos here, which slid back to, unfortunately, fortnightly releases around last week. I'm sorry if I kept you waiting, and I'm glad that you're still here. There is a lot happening in Join Agile training space, more specifically as the closed beta of what was originally announced and known as Lean Agile Certified Practitioner Test, LACP, came to an end successfully, reasonably successfully, with a lot of information gathered and changes required in the future, in future iterations, so to speak, so that this professional assessment succeeds further. This is what consumed and keeps consuming a lot of my weekend time when I normally prepare these visuals and these episodes for you. So for the foreseeable future, I would say it would be realistic for you to expect further episodes of this podcast and video format to be released on a fortnightly basis, again back to every 2 weeks, with further announcements surrounding LACP test on the way, hopefully not too far off, so watch this space for sure. In other words, I'm still here, stay tuned. I very much appreciate your support and interest in all of this that I'm gathering through multiple sources. And I will talk to you on the next episode.